All right, let's go. Okay, so what I was saying here is that we are talking about micro-credentials. This is the micro-credential for Google Slides. These are the requirements for what needs to be included in your work, and that will be a little badge you can get. And the idea with these badges is that they stay with you. So you'll get a badge. The badge will have with it a definition of what it indicates, like what skills you have shown and demonstrated to get the badge. And then you can actually put the badge on your LinkedIn profile. You can use it in other places. And it's really a model of this micro-credentialing where they're little, it's not unlike the Scouts or something like that, where you've proven your skills in these very specific pieces. The one for Google Docs, also a list of all the elements that you need to include. And then the HyperDoc one, which is actually quite maybe a little bit more of a lift because you are going to do a lesson plan with it that's quite intensive. So again, you'll see if it's something you want to do. The deadline for all of these is the Monday before our next meeting. That's going to be the rule generally. So that is April 22nd. And you can always reach out and ask questions and we'll send reminders. And each one of them is broken out on these documents, which are also in your folder. So you can read more explicitly how you submit your information. Basically, we just ask you to fill out another form and put the link to your content, to your project there. And that way we can capture everything that you've sent us. All right. Any questions about that? Anybody have received a digital badge before now? No? The few faces I can see are saying no. Okay, well, if you have, put it in the chat because that's exciting. I've received a couple, and it's always a question of like, where do I put them? But the idea is that it's at least an indication of the work that you've done, and if it's helpful for you for your resume to show that you have these skills, this is one way we can help you with that. All right. So moving right along. So it seems like we have quite a few experts here. Not experts. I'm not making fun of anyone. I'm just saying a lot of people feel like they've got their Google Slides skills going on. So what I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about what the techniques we are seeing here. These are 3 slides from a longer HyperDoc. And what we're going to practice a little bit here is that notice and wonder idea. So what are some things that you notice? And there's three slides from the HyperDoc. It's longer than that. Has more content than that. But let's go back to the first page. Let's see if I can do that. Okay, so what are some things that you notice or wonder here? Like if I'm looking at this, I notice, first of all, that the whole background is an image, right? And I don't know if that's I wonder if that's a background or whether that's just a image that's plonked on top of the slide itself. I also notice that the text boxes are not where I normally see text boxes on a slide. Like when I open up my slides and I create a new slide, it's usually like with a header at the top or a title at the top and a big text box below that. And seemingly that's not true here. And I also noticed that behind the writing is white, which makes it a little bit easier to read. What are some other things that you notice here? And feel free to put it in the chat or to unmute and just shout it out. What is a HyperDoc? I guess I didn't even start with that, did I? So a HyperDoc is, we will have a little bit more where we'll pull that apart, but a HyperDoc is basically a Google document file of some sort, usually either a doc or a slides deck that takes the learner through a lesson, but they can do the whole lesson inside the file. So it's not just a group of links, right? You'll see in these examples even some things that maybe make a HyperDoc. The idea is that inside the HyperDoc, they can explore a topic, they can reflect on what they've learned, they can collaborate with other learners. There's I think 7 different steps that we want to see in the best kind of HyperDoc, and we'll talk about those. So right now we're just talking about the slides component. And slides work really well for HyperDoc because you can have a different slide for each element in the HyperDoc, or you can certainly bring people through a story. I mean, we basically use these as ways to tell stories, right? Like our presentations. And in a Google Doc, which is another common way to create a HyperDoc, you'll just see, we'll look at a HyperDoc that's made in a doc versus slides. Again, you're just creating boxes or a table where people are taken through step by step a whole lesson. And it can be something that students do or learners do at home and come into class having done some work, like a flipped classroom version, or it can be something that people work on together. So and again, if anyone else has used HyperDocs or made HyperDocs, feel free to write some more stuff in the chat or unmute. So I see designing layout or theme. The background image is not aligned properly. It looks tilted. Yeah, it's a little wavy. I'm wondering if that's just the photo, right? Like it looks like there's some waviness going on inside the image of the newspaper headline or front page. Anything else here that you notice? If you were going to try and replicate this page, are there things that you were like, oh, I know how they did that? Or are there any questions? This page maybe is pretty simple. There's a link. Where's the link? Thanks, Lori. Where do you see a link? Or how do you know there's a link? At the bottom, right. I'm going to guess you mean this writing. Why? So as I scroll over it, I notice, right, that my cursor changes from being an arrow to a hand. I don't know if you guys see that, but I see that. It is a hyperlink, right? So there are words here that we can read, but we guess that it's a link because it's underlined in a different color and that it will take us out to a googly, long, crazy link that we wouldn't be able to read out loud to each other. All right, let's go on to the next page and see if there are additional things that you notice. So what's going on here? Kind of the same, right? Similar stuff. We've got an image. I see another hyperlink, which I'm guessing, right? Because I see, again, my cursor changes and it's a different color and underlined. So again, in a HyperDoc, this is a very common first step. You're going to have an engagement activity where you're going to pull the interest of the learner into the story. And it might be some writing on the slide or on the doc that leads out to some other content. But it's kind of the introduction to the topic. All right, we have a couple of folks joining us, yay. Okay, so on this one, what do we notice? How is this created? Ah, yes, a table, right? A simple table. And in slides, how do you add a table? Insert, yes, good guess, right? So insert is always your friend. If you're going to put some content on a screen, guess that it probably is going to at least be under the insert. It might even also be in your ribbon. And the tables here are very similar to tables you would see in Microsoft or in a doc. You get to say how many columns you want. And how many columns do we have here? Just one, right? They just wanted to divide the information, and you can set up a table like that. There's not even a header. So what this does is it allows the person who comes in here, right now they can only see it, but if they were to put it back into the non-present mode, they could actually type their answers in to these boxes, and the boxes would grow with their answers. You could have this link out to a document if you're doing this as a HyperDoc, and they could do the writing outside of that. But again, we're giving them an opportunity here to write some content, and they can do it right in the doc. And that is a kind of, again, a typical element of a HyperDoc. And that's what's nice about the table, is that the table will grow as their content grows. What do we see here? What are some wonders? Again, pretty typical, right? We've seen kind of the same thing in many of these. We've seen some images put in for interest. We've seen hyperlinks, pretty common. And in this case, we have two, right? We have this is a hyperlink. This is technically a hyperlink, although we really, when we talk about hyperlinks, we tend to mean the first kind, where we see words that a link has been applied to. This is kind of the same thing. It's just that these aren't words that we would ever say out loud to each other. So when we say hyperlink, I think we really mean this, but in legal whatever, technically these would be hyperlinks too. Slide template. So Leslie, say more about a slide template.
Oh, then I'm gonna have to be on voice
Yay!
because I would type too slow. Well, it's using a template where you're duplicating the slides over and over with the same layout. And so the first one had that background because it was the cover. And then of course with your layout you could add tables or hyperlinks.
Beautiful, yes. So if we were making our own template, we would decide, right? Like this one obviously has a red background, was a decision that was probably made. So we're not applying that to each individual slide. Instead, we set that up at the beginning in our theme, and then every slide will be that color until we tell it to stop doing that, right? And the same with the header up here, the font that is being used, that would also be part of that, right? So yeah, great observation, Leslie, that whether they just plonked in this stuff and moved these guys around, which I'm guilty of quite often. Definitely, I think they made their own template with a color in the background, the white header, the font was something I think that they must have included in their template. So that's a great observation. Excuse me. All right, allergy time. Okay, so we'll go out and look at that in a moment in the real world, but you've seen now a version of the beginning of a HyperDoc. The HyperDoc slides probably go on for another 10 slides or so. Again, we'll look at that one. But now we're going to look at a version that's a doc. And this is a HyperDoc so this is our front page from our one we were just looking at. And this is what a doc version would look like. And you can kind of see it's not so, let me actually stop sharing and we'll go look at I won't stop sharing. I will get out of that and I will take us to our folder. So we have in our folder these examples, right? So we have, this is the HyperDoc Google Doc example. Oops, is that the right one? Yes. And this is a lesson that a teacher created for actually, I think like third graders on what commas are. And she starts off by reading the book to them. So there's an actual interactive activity with the students or the learners. But then there's items that they do on their own. And when they do the notice and wonder, the teacher helps to type that in. So what are some things that you notice here that are different perhaps than typical documents, Google Docs? Like I noticed the color, right? Typically docs are white. This is exciting that it's pink and orange or orange. Yeah, so Lori asks if templates are helpful. They are the same as themes, right? So when we were talking about the Google Slides, setting up that template, we really meant theme. Thank you for correcting us with that language, because when you're looking for it, it's going to be in your view tab, and it's going to be theme master or something like that. And we'll look at it together in a minute. And that's where you can go in and sort of set up your whole structure. Or you can take a theme that already exists, right? There are many themes that show up down the side, or you can adopt from here, but also people make them out in the world and you can always bring one in. Kind of like the same as PowerPoint. So we have a table again, right? So, and I'm going to guess that comes from the insert tab. We have some hyperlinks, right? We guess that these hyperlinks will take us out to some content out in the world. Another table, very similar like that first one, right? Some information, and then we're asking the learner to enter their own information into the document. All right, so that's a pretty classic setup for our HyperDocs. Okay, so which one are you drawn to more of these two examples? Now, it's down to you and your particular images and your writing and the content that you're doing, but do you have a feeling already whether you would prefer, if you were a learner, to do it in a doc or to do it in slides? Or what skills might someone need different if they were doing slides or docs? So Mary likes the doc. Can you say why, Mary? Are you willing to unmute and tell us why you like the doc better?
Sure. I don't know, it just seemed cleaner, easier to use. I always look for, because I teach lower level students, so I always look for things that look like they're easier to use. I did have a question,
Yeah.
like, because you talked about sharing these things.
Yes.
So how do you share these with a group of students, and that each one has their own individual copy without changing,
That's a great question.
it for everybody?
Right. Excellent question. I'm going to hold it because we're going to get there, and I have a
Okay, that's fine. I'm sorry.
no,
I
no,
tend to do that.
I love it. I love it. I actually have a new tip I just learned. So I went to COA conference last week and I learned a new thing. Last time we talked a little bit about how you can share, we'll talk about how you can share links with the copy in there that forces people to make a copy. But I have a new one. I'm very excited about it. So we'll get there. Thank you, Mary. And I agree. Like, I think as far as the basic skills you might need to just manipulate or move through the doc is a little easier. The slides, let's go look to the sample of slides because I didn't show you that. So this is the full HyperDoc for the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. There are 17, and it's for a higher level, obviously, so there's also more work. But there's 17 slides. As a person using this, I would have to know the difference between looking at it in this mode versus in the slideshow mode, and that some things I can't type into it when it's in the slideshow mode, or even maybe how I move from slide to slide might be a skill that I don't know. So certainly be aware that using a doc versus slides would require different skills from the learner's perspective as well as your own. Anybody else have a preference between, and again, we're just looking at two examples, so they could be very different depending on your, tastes or the content that you're talking about. But if you can get a feeling for, so Wei Hung says slides are more for giving presentations, and they are, although we can use them as a book. You can think of this as a book. I didn't do it in my slides this time, but often when I share slides, I will give you the agenda as links to other slides in the presentation. And I've even turned them so that they're more of a like typical book shape, where they're more in the portrait style. I don't know what you call it. Anyway, in a portrait dimensions. So you can really make it look like a book then. So the original the design certainly was to mimic PowerPoint, and in that sense for presentations. But if we think about what we give in presentations, it's just a way of organizing information. And what slides gives us a little bit more richly than docs is where you can place images. So there's some richness there that can be fun. So in this case, we were looking at let me open up those. Right, if we could take all of this and put this into slides, right? This might be one slide, there might be a little story about commas, then there might be this table on a third slide, right? So we could divide this content and put it onto slides, just like we could take all of the stuff from here, and it would probably be a little less, it'd be a little bit more, you'd have more on a page. So maybe 3 or 4 of these things would be on a single page. So you certainly could, I think you could organize the content in either place. Anybody else have any feelings about which way they would prefer if they were a learner? interesting. Lori says that she wishes there was a way to create chapters and slides. When you say chapters, what would that mean to you, Lori?
I mean, like for instance, like I have a grammar workshop slide thing that's like 300 slides.
Yeah.
So it would be nice if I could put like all the commas together and all the verbs together, and then have like a content page with like a link to that section.
And you could do that, right? So if we're looking at
I
this
don't know
one,
how.
all right, let's look at how we can do that. So in this one, we're going to add a new page, and we're going to get rid of this guy. So here's a trick, right? If you make a plus sign after any page, it's going to mimic whatever that page layout is. And if you don't know what that layout is, or if you want to do a different layout, a shortcut is to do that little downward arrow, and then you can pick from all these different layouts. So I just want to, this is what I consider a regular layout. I don't want that slide number 2, so I'm going to just go backspace and delete it, and now I'm in here. So if I wanted to do an index for what's going on here, right? We could say, so we have explore questions, we have more explore, and then we have fire and skyscraper questions. Okay, so I'm going to make 2, just for the sake of the agenda, right? I'm going to say explore, and then I'm going to say fire and skyscrapers. And now to link these elements here to the actual slides, I'm going to highlight the word explore. And how would you make a link normally? If you were going to make this a hyperlink, how would you do that? And I'm talking to anyone, Lori, you can answer.
Insert link.
Insert link. So we have insert. We could go find a link there. We also have it on our ribbon over here.
Oh.
And if you notice, as I scroll over that, we could even do Control plus a K as our keyboard. I never remember that. So I use the ribbon one because it's there. Or you can actually sometimes just right click on the word, and you'll also get the option of a link there. So there's several different ways to do it. So we're going to click on link. And now normally this is where I would just paste the link to the thing out in the world, right? We're going to move, we would normally, most of the time, I'm putting a link in here that will take you to a website or take you somewhere else. In this case, I want to link it to slides in this presentation. Shut up, what? Okay, so now I can scroll down and I can find the page that I want to connect to. And
oh my God, that's so easy.
it's so now you know. It's so easy, and the key here is that you want to have given the pages the titles you want to use, because it'll connect to that page. If I go in later on and add another slide, it will still connect to that page, even though the numbering will have changed. So it's really, you're doing yourself a favor if you're connecting not to, we'll do it for this one and you'll see. I could click, I could say first slide, last slide, those will change over time, right?
Yeah.
So again, I want to go down to where there's one like that. Now, if I scroll over this is what I'm saying about skills, right? If I scroll over this, when it's in this view, I have to remember that I'm going to click on it once and I'm going to click on it twice to actually get there. If this was in the slideshow view, I don't have to click it once. So that's a skill set for people to know about, especially if you're giving it to them to move through. You can share it with them as a presentation, and I'll show you how you can do that. So you can kind of force them to be in presentation mode, but then they can't get out of presentation mode and answer questions inside the doc. So you'd have to decide then that they would go somewhere else to answer the questions. And I just want to, I know several people came in after we kind of got going. We are recording, so you'll see the beginning part, but if you could scan this QR code and sign in. I'll put the link in the chat in a moment again, but we need everyone to sign in. So please sign in. Okay, so now the other thing I like to do when I do this is I like to go back to the, let's see, explore part, and I want to put a link in here so I can get back to the agenda. Because if this really was a book, I'd want to be able to flip back and forth, right? So what I usually do is I insert a shape, like a square. And I'm going to give it a different color by going over to my little bucket. and I'm going to make it yellow, bright yellow. And then I'm going to actually, well, yeah, anyway, now I'm going to put a text box in there, and I'm going to write agenda, and I'm going to make it fit. Let's see. And I'm going to make it black. Okay. And I can center it if I want to. And okay. So now I have my agenda button. It's not very pretty. You could actually have an image there. You can do a lot of, like if you're using Canva, I would go to Canva and make a fun button and put it here. The key is that afterwards you're going to click on this and you're going to do the link thing again. And now you're going to go back to the page 2, which I didn't name yet, but will be the agenda page. So now when I click on that, oops, is it going to let me do it? Oh, maybe it didn't do it. Let's do it. So we can make the rectangle, which is yellow, into our link, or we can make the word, and I would tend to do both. So if we have the image is now highlighted in blue, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let me give this a name first. Agenda. Okay. So now I'm going to make a link. I'm doing the same thing I basically did, but instead of linking it with a word, I'm going to come in here and link it with an image. And now I'm going to click agenda. And so what should happen now is that I can go back to the agenda. I can go from there back to explore, right? So you can have that throughout your thing. I didn't include it, and I will add it to our box or to our folder. I took part in a course on AI, and the folks who put that together did everything in Google Slides, and they made these amazing slides where they had like tabs. It looked like there were tabs across the top and tabs down the side. It looked like that, but all they were was this thing that we just did here. They looked like a tab. They acted like a website tab, but they did them in slides. So all they were doing was this. They were taking an image that looked like a tab, and they were linking it to another page in the same slides presentation. Now, a person can just move through the slides presentation like this, so you can't stop them from seeing something later on, but you can help them move through it, and especially if they want to come back afterwards and be like, oh, the thing I really care about is this. I don't want to have to go through the whole presentation again. I just want to get exactly to that page. So there you go. Lori, did that answer your question? Do you think that would work for your particular desire?
I have to figure out how to name the slides yet. And what is that with the title?
So you use whatever the title is up here, but this could be moved somewhere else. I've also done it where I've actually made this invisible on the page by just changing it to white.
Yeah.
So it's not visible here because you just want a big, beautiful picture or something. But when you go back to that linking thing, it will still know the word agenda is associated. So you just want to make sure whatever's labeled as title
And it
has
has to be on all the pages in that section.
no. So all that's going to happen right now, the agenda is only going to take me to the sort of section headers, you could call them.
Okay.
You could literally do this for every single page, but that will be a lot. I tend to
Yeah.
have section, like I'll even do a different, like I'll do a slide that's a different color, and I might have an image there and just the word agenda, just the word explore. And then there's 5 slides after that that are about explore. I don't do a link to each of those pages. I just go to the explore section, and then
I got it.
move around inside there. Yeah. Anybody else done anything like this, or any suggestions for what Lori's describing, or making kind of a book where you can move around easily inside it? All right, let's go back to our slides. So we were talking about how people feel about whether they prefer this or that. Do you prefer the slides? Do you prefer the docs? And we got a few answers. Anybody else want to answer or put it in the chat? Let me open up that chat again. It's like doing an ebook. Exactly, Fina. Very nice. And yes, Wei Hung mentions right click. And I have to say, I'm a PC person. If you're a Mac person, then it's a little different. And I know we've run into this issue before, and I never remember the answer, but there are ways to do it on a Mac too, if you don't have a left-right click. All right, so I'm going to keep an eye on the chat, but keep going. So I see someone saying slides because I know how to use them exactly, right? This is kind of we do tend to go with the tool that we know better. Again, thinking about your learners and what digital skills you might want them to have. This could be a component of that, right? You could really, people could get very familiar with one or the other of these two tools or both of them. If we're looking at our slides today, when I was showing you the skills that we're looking for the badges, right? You would be creating a new slides deck. You'd have at least 5 slides. You'd want to insert some images. You'd want to duplicate a slide, duplicate the slide, and then group images. Have you grouped images? Do you know what that means when I say group images? Can someone tell us?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yeah.
Taking more than one image and grouping them and moving them around together.
Beautiful.
So you would go into a range, right?
Yes, and the way I do it, and maybe you have another way. So I'm going to come in here and I would go to my images. I would find the images that I want. So I could either search the web. Let's just do it that way. I'm going to look up ice cream cone. And I'm going to stick this guy in there. Okay, nice and big. And then maybe I want to insert another image. And this time we'll do and I want to insert this image. And we know that we can move them around. So we know when we're looking at something in our slides, and this is actually true across the Google stuff, you get that blue outline that tells you that you're working on this. You know, these little blue anchors around it. And when I get my 4 pointy arrow, I know I can move it, right? So say I have that one over there and I have this one over here. What we're talking about with grouping them, and the way I do it is I would just click outside here, but then drag across both of them. And now they are together. And if I was to make them smaller, they're going to be the same. They're going to shrink at the same rate. Or if I want to move them around now as a group, they'll stay together. If I unclick, they're separate. If I move this one over here, it's separate. So it's a very temporary thing, the way I'm doing it. And I'm not sure if there's another way. Does anyone else know if there's a grouping thing? There might be under arrange. Oh, now it's confused. There we go. It lost part of itself. I'm just doing too much.
Just do undo.
Yes, exactly. Control Z. So that's a good point, right? We can Control Z to get rid of things. It looks like it just got, I don't know, something happened. I got confused. Let me look at arrange. Yeah, so arrange changes what is on top of the other thing, right? So right now, the sun is on top of the ice cream cone. If I click the ice cream cone and I go to arrange, I can send it backward. Maybe. It's an unhappy image. It wants to do its own thing. Oh, it is backwards. Sorry, never mind. If I wanted to bring it forward, let me do that. Order, bring it to the front. There you go. So I will say that one way I often do this, the way that Google decides what goes on top of the other one is the time in which you add the images, right? So the oldest image is going to be in the back, and anything new you're adding is going to be piled on top. You can always, you know, highlight this and then Control X, and then Control Y, or sorry, Control V to bring it in, and now it's the newest thing that's been there. So that's another way to do it. But you do have this arrange button, which does actually let you do it in a more sophisticated manner.
And Nell,
yes.
sorry, would you say that bring forward and then can you select that again where it says
Sure.
arrange? The difference between bring front or bring forward. Forward would be like the topmost level, and then front is just the layer
Right.
above.
So say
Okay.
we had three images, right? The front and the back the back is the most back and the front is the most front, and then bringing it towards is sort of a step between those two. Does that make sense? So and it's quite common, like if I want this writing, right? If I say, I love ice cream, it's underneath now. It also can be handled with this, where I can now highlight that, go to arrange, and say that I want this to be at the very, I want it to bring it to the front. I want it to be on top of everything. So as I move it now, it would be on top of the sun as well. Does that make sense? So it is the front. It is the closest to us. And then these I could change the order of by sending one to, and you'll eventually get there by just doing it back and back and back. But the kind of a big move would be to go up to arrange and then go to back. Back is, there's only one back, there's only one front. The forward and backward, there are many steps, right? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
fantastic. And we saw so we talked a little bit about the theme piece. So that's going to be over here under view, right? We have the theme builder. So these days I don't usually use the theme that Google suggests. I go in and make my own, and you can see that this is my theme right now, right? I decided that this would be the font for my titles, that it would be blue. I decided that these would be in Oswald and this size and black. I hate the gray thing. I don't know why that's the default. So there's in your theme, there's always going to be this slide at the top. And if you change any of those things, that change will trickle through your slides. You can also go into individual types of pages, but that will not impact the other pages. So if I went in here and changed this, it would not impact pages that look like this. But if I change this page because it's under the word theme, then all my pages will get that treatment. So I could change the color in the background, for example. If I wanted to make the background, let's go with a pale color. And I click done. You see, it happened to all of my slides. But if I had done that, let me do a Control Z, maybe, there we go. If I come down to, I don't know that I have any slides that way though. But what I was going to say is if I came down to this slide and changed this background, only the section headers would get the theme. So if and let me see if what I have is a section header. Is this a section header? Anyway, I don't have an example of one, but how do you separate them again? This is a question from Mary Pop. How you do that with images in a doc too? I think you can do it with images in a doc too. So let's start here by, again, if we go back up to that example with those two things. So I want to be outside of whatever it is I want to group. And if there's another text box there, it's going to get confusing. So you kind of have to be strategic in how you're going to do this. You'll notice if I go up now, it's going to group just the title, this image, and the text box behind it, but the sun is not part of it. So if I drag this around now, the sun will stay still and everything else moves. And to unselect it, I just click somewhere else. And then the blue lines go away and you're back to everything being separate. So it's very temporary. If you've used Canva, you can group in Canva and you can tell it to group something and then they stay grouped until you tell them to ungroup. And I'm guessing there might be something here about that too, but generally this works. You don't really need to do it more than that. And you can always do Control Z, right? Control Z is an undo and Control Y is a redo, and that can help you with this kind of business too. But it is helpful if you've just created a page where you've adjusted everything the way you want it to be and you decide, oh, it's a little big or a little small. It's very helpful to be able to group everything at one time and then just make everything bigger, everything smaller equally. In Docs, let's see if we can do that. So if we were to insert images, sorry, let me make this stuff a little smaller. So I'm going to insert image. I'm going to do it from my computer. Let's look at our robot hand. And let's insert image from my computer. And we'll add this one. Okay, so we have two images that are very large. I'm going to make this one a little smaller. And I'm going to pull it. Yeah, it's hard. You know, this is the thing with Docs. It's not as easy. Kind of just like with Microsoft, it's not that easy to move images around. So now if I want to, let's see if I can do what we just did. So I'm going to, yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, I can't do it. It pulled them together inside this table, but it's not letting me group them. So if you decide you want to try that out and you find out you can figure it out, I'm sure if I Googled how to group images in Docs, I would maybe be able to figure it out, but I've never done it. Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. You know, one of the things to notice for yourself is when you are about to make something, you know, what are the questions you ask or the things you quickly gather in your mind that help you determine what kind of document you're going to create? Is this a slides thing? Is this a doc thing? Is this Word? Is it Google? Because we do that a lot. And it's really interesting to watch how many rules you've created that you just spontaneously know, oh, this is coming up for me right now, because if I was doing images, I would never do docs. I would totally be like, oh, that's a time to use slides. Or I would go to Canva. So noticing for yourself when you decide, you know, that's not the only thing to think about, right? Who's the audience? How are you sharing it? Who's going to see it? What else is going to be there? Those are all other things to think through before I would make a decision on what document file type I would be creating. But we do it very quickly and we often don't think through, we don't notice how many really, you know, I would say these are very good skills at very quickly understanding what it is we want to use, because we know either our own skills or what we know we can do with these particular tools. This is what the tool that would be the right one to use. All right, how do you change the page color? So this is Mary Pop, and I'm guessing this is about the doc, right? Not the slides. It's very similar. So with docs, we actually, under file, we have page setup. And this is where you could change your you can change your margins, you can change the page color, you can say whether it should be portrait or landscape. It's a new thing to be pageless, right? So there'd be actually no outlines, it would just take up the whole space. I like a 0.5 margin usually, and you can set defaults just like you did, maybe you did in Microsoft, where you can actually, you know, Google has its own default, but you could come in here and change what your margins should be, and certainly the color. There's a place I think where you can also set the default font, but that's not here. So you would make your changes, you'd click OK, and it would be applied. Let's look under file again. So we have our page setup, language, You know, if you made changes that you don't like, version history is always a thing to come back to. You also have that up here under that clock, so you can go back to an earlier version. It doesn't save every step of the way, but you can certainly get back to a step before you're unhappy. Adding a shortcut, moving it, renaming it, downloading it. When download, you can download in all these different formats, right? So you could download as a PDF or download it into Microsoft. If you're concerned about the formatting, you probably want to do a PDF because it will keep the formatting. If you download it as a Microsoft Word document, the formatting could go bananas. So it's always a fun adventure. Making a copy. So we talked earlier, I am going to skip along now to, oops, this is the wrong. Okay, so the question was asked about what is a HyperDoc. So the big difference here is that students are really interacting with the content. Learners are really interacting with the content, and they have the ability to respond and learn inside the document, not just by going out to a bunch of links. So you want to be careful with these two things. In our folder, we also have let's see, where is it? That's the lesson plan. Here we go, the elements of a HyperDoc. So if you Google HyperDocs, you'll find that there was two women who kind of came up with this idea, and they now have a website called hyperdocs.com or something like that. So you can go learn a lot. And I have several links at the end of the slides today that take you out to more information about HyperDocs. But the idea is to include all of these elements in a HyperDoc. You want to start by engaging the learner. And you'll see, I think some people make the mistake of like labeling something engaged. That the learner doesn't care whether this section's engaged or not. You want to know that this is where you're engaging your students. So you're going to have the introduction to what was the triangle waste fire, right? Then we have explore, we have explain, we have apply, we have share, reflect, and extend. So often in your lessons, you're probably doing all of these things. You might not have thought about it really clearly, or maybe you don't do everything every time, but we're just bringing all of that now into an actual document, whether that's a set of Google Slides. Some people have done it with Google Sites. And the reason it's done with Google is because of this collaborative component, because it is connected to the World Wide Web. While we're sitting here, we can do a lot of things inside here. This was also all created before some of the newer updates to the Google tools. So for example, now if I wanted to look up the word explore, how would I look that word up? I don't know what it means. It's a word that's unknown to me. What would I do to look it up? If you had a student who wanted to find the definition of a word, what would you tell them to do?
Click on it, right click and look for it.
So if I go to the word explore and I right click on it, it's not a hyperlink, right? Right now it's just a word that I read.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm just reading it in a paragraph. So it could be the word curate. I don't know what that means. Anybody, any guesses? What I mean, would you tell them, like, maybe look it up on your phone or go to a dictionary or something? Is that what you would tell folks to do?
On the menu bar to the right, you have the plus
Well, you
sign.
could hyperlink it, right? You could hyperlink it to the definition, right?
You could, but that's after
But-
you know what words they want to know. So Leslie, what were you just saying?
Oh, on the very right side, you have a plus sign at the bottom of your menu where, yeah,
Over
right
here?
there. Yeah, isn't that the Explorer or
Explore's gone away. They took Explore
no?
away, yes. But I think it's because they're bringing new things. So I think Explore was really their AI, but it doesn't matter. In this situation, we highlight the word and we go up to tools and we have the word, we have dictionary.
Mm.
So right inside the document, I can get the dictionary. So if a student is reading content and they don't know what something is, or you're reading content and you don't know what something is, just go to that word, highlight it, or actually I think you can even just be at the end of the word, and then you can And these are, you can use your keystrokes too, but I'm bad at remembering those things. Yeah, so just putting my cursor at the end of a word even. Now, the definitions might not be easy for people to read and understand either, right? So this is not a solution for everybody or everything, and it might be for people who are closer to getting their GED or have quite a high level of English, but it's the beginning. And maybe, I haven't played with this at all to see if there's a way to tell it, what level.
But now they would need to still go up to the menu and choose that, right? It's not like it's
Correct.
automatic.
It's
Okay.
not automatic. But what I love about it is kind of the same thing as like the insert images and things. You are next to the internet all the time while you're in here. You don't have to go to a new tab. I historically would have gone to a new tab and looked the word up in the dictionary, or I would have gone to a new tab to search for an image that I wanted to put into my document. And what one of the things that Google offers us, because it takes a lot too, right? It's our data is, it's using our data. There's a reason it doesn't cost us money to use Google, but there are a lot of things that we get from it too. So in this case, it's on the internet anyway. So things that you might have thought you have to go away from here to go do, you can actually bring into this. You can do it while you're here. And that, I think, for learners is helpful because as Marika said, if you know as the teacher that part of the vocabulary we're practicing right now is the word curate. So that's a word I expect my students not to know. Then yeah, you would hyperlink that and take them out to a specific definition that you liked, right? But what I'm saying here is that a student comes in here and any word they don't know, they could look up. It doesn't have to be curated by you as the teacher. So that's kind of a powerful thing, I think. Just like putting these images in is kind of a powerful thing. Again, I'm guessing they did these images, they would be hard to find in that search box that we looked at earlier. And you probably do want to do that out on the internet somewhere fully in a full search. But the fact that you can actually ask a question like, what is the state bird of New York? And they could go find that image while they're still here. That's more of a scavenger hunt than necessarily something you would do inside a HyperDoc. But the fact that, if we're thinking about, so when we are doing work here in our Google Club, this is for us all to learn how to use these tools. But part of that's the idea that you might turn around and think about how these tools could be used with your learners or how your learners could use these tools. So thinking about ways to help them practice their digital skills while they're interacting with this kind of content is really rich. And I think to me, the dictionary is one of those things that if I had known that, I don't know. It opens up a lot of possibilities. All right, so we were looking at this document. Yeah, so in the badge for this particular task, if you were to make your own HyperDoc, we would want to see how you are handling each of these elements. The lesson plan takes you through a little bit more thinking. There's a lot of questions in the lesson plan. You don't have to answer all of them, but just we want to make sure that you're thinking through some of those elements that you might not always think through. And you have some examples. So again, in the slides, if we go all the way to the end, not all the way to the end. Slide 26, we have getting started, which is their website. Lots of examples, videos, everything. This was an interesting template that looks like a notebook with tabs. You were kind of just talking about how we might, that's an interesting idea. And like I said, I will add the example that I went through myself when I was taking that course. Then we have the triangle shirtwaist factory fire, which we were just looking at, and the copy of the comma rules one. And there's a video of the teacher using this too. So you'll see that. I guess I didn't put it in there. I'll find that link and I'll add it to here. Oh, this is it. Whatever. Okay, I am smarter than I think I am. Yes, this is the video of the teacher actually using this HyperDoc. Again, it's with third graders, but you'll see her process and there's a nice narration over it. Now, we were talking also about sharing. And the question was, how can you make a single Google Doc or you make a single slide deck that is a HyperDoc and you want to share it with people. What we did last time, so when you get your share link, right? So if I was to share, let me do it live. Let's make a new page. Okay, so if I was going to share these slides with you, I would go to my share button. I would say anyone with a link can view it, and I would copy that link. And I'm going to paste that here. And it's long, right? Now, I'm also going to share it with editor access. And this is my question last time, and I'm not sure if anyone remembers, but if I paste this link, is it going to look the same as this, or is it going to look different? So this one is view only, and now I'm going to paste a link that gives people edit access.
It's going to look different.
Okay, anybody else? Here we go.
It's going to look the same.
Yes, Marika, it's exactly the same. There's no way in looking at these links whether you could tell what level of access they have. It's really confusing, right? Because we see the word edit, we see the word sharing. We're convinced that this must mean you have an edit capability, and then this one must have been edit too. Because I changed the level of access, both of these links now can edit. And if I go back up here and I change it back to viewer, I don't even have to copy the link. Both of these are now going to be view only. So there's like a, I don't know, maybe a 50-second window where you've made the change and someone might have a link and they can still access the previous level of access. But very, very quickly after you change the level of access, all the links that are out in the world will have that level of access. That's why when I'm sharing, usually I get this link to share with people coming to my workshop, but I might share it with Liz Elena here or Cynthia because she's going to work on it with me. And I'm going to give her editor access, and I can change this anytime, but that's completely separate from what level access I give here. And this one, I can't stop people having access, but I can change it between the viewer, commenter, and editor. And my default is viewer. So that's the first step. By looking at the link, you have no idea. You have to go back to the actual share settings to know what level of access someone has. The next thing we're going to do is to see that if I paste this link again, now this is a live link, right? It's a different color, it's underlined, it'll take me straight there. In Google Tools, it usually means I have to click it once and then I have to click this little thing again, but that's what it'll take me to. In this case, it's not a live link yet, right? Like I click on it, it's not doing anything. It's just a bunch of letters and words. How would I make this into a live link?
Press enter.
Exactly. I go to the very, very end of the very last letter in the link, and I put my cursor there and I hit enter, and it will make it live. You could also, use this, but that's a lot more work. This is really lovely. If it recognizes it as a link, it'll make it into a link. In this case, I actually don't want it to be a live link. So how would I make it not live? How would I take that out? I could do a Control-Z, but I also see here that I can
Remove.
copy it. Exactly. So I have a copy, I have edit, and this means remove. So if I click on that, it goes back to being an editable link. In here, I'm going to change this word to the word copy. And now at the end, I'm going to make it a live link. So they're going to look very similar. If I scroll over, if I click on this, you see this. If I click on this, you see this. But if I really go here, it's going to force me to make a copy. Now, that's lovely, except I actually can't see the document, and that could make me both annoyed and suspicious. Not if my dear teacher was giving me this link, but I might not like that. So what I just learned was a way to make this into a template preview. So instead of the word copy, I put in template preview. So let's do that here. I'll paste it again. Again, not in the live link. If you do it in the live link and you edit the words, it won't make any difference. The link will still take you where the link originally went to. So here we want to put in template/preview. And now we're going to make it live. And now we're going to go there. And look at what it did. It says use template. So I still have to make a copy of it, but I get to see what it is, which is really very, very cool. Now, if any of you have used Google Forms and tried to share a Google form with somebody else for them to be actually able to edit the Google form, not just respond to it, this works for Google Forms too. So very exciting, hot off the presses, new to me.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is exciting. But wait a minute. So the Google form, if you do the same thing with template preview, does that mean if you share it with somebody, they could be collaborators as well? Okay.
Yes, that's what I understand. So I still have to do that. The guy who told me about this, that's what he was telling me for, the reason he was telling me about it. But so we'll have to test it out before next time. But
Okay.
that is my understanding. Yes.
Okay.
The way I use forms nowadays, I would have to put them in a folder, and then I share the folder with someone, and then they can come in and collaborate with me without having to make them a collaborator. Anyway, the Google Forms are tricky to work with other people for sure. All right. So those are two ways that you could share a single doc, and have other people make copies of it. They can also, if you give them view only access, they can go under file and make a copy. And you could also teach your students just to do that, right? So that's another way that they just go in there and make their own copy. Okay, any questions? It was a lot. I'm going to stop. Well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing. And in the chat, I'm going to share with you two things. I'm going to share with you the evaluation for today, which we really need your responses for. Both, it's a kind of a wacky survey, so not all the information is that useful to me. Some of it is really useful, so I really do look at them and understand what folks are saying. But it is really important because DYCD really wants to kind of see what we're doing. So please do the survey. That's there. And then the other thing I want to share with you, some of you came in a little late, so you didn't do it as a pre-test, we could call it. But now I want you to do that self-assessment again and see what the difference, how different you're feeling about some of those things, or if there's still things that are lingering out there that you feel less able to do. I have to say, it seemed like a lot of you felt pretty comfortable, but maybe some of you who are a little bit less comfortable or in certain areas. So Mary asks, when you make their own copy, then they can make changes that don't affect other copies, right? Exactly. So when there's a version that I have that I share with you, there's one version in the world. We're all pointing to it. When I make you make a copy, there are now two, and they are separate. I can keep adding stuff to mine, and you can add stuff to yours, and we're never going to see each other's stuff. That's very important for people to understand. So today I gave you the link to our slides, and some people may have made a copy. The downside of that is I might go in today and add some stuff, right? Like there might be some things that people asked questions about, or my own wondering now about, like, can I group images in docs? I might go out and find that information and add it to my slides. And if you've made a copy, the version you have is stuck in time from the time you made it a copy. So as I was saying in my thinking about what kind of tool or which document or which file type I'm going to use, I also have the same question in my mind when I want to make a copy versus when I want to make a shortcut, right? So that's the other way we can do that. And today I gave you the link to the slides. So let me put that in the chat one more time. If someone gave me the link to their slides, I'd immediately want to make a shortcut, because that I can control where it goes. I can have a folder called Google Club, and I can put shortcuts to all these things in there, and they will give you access to always to the newest version of my slides. So if I want to take something that you created and I want to change it and I want to make it for me to share with my people, then I'm going to make a copy. But if I want to stay abreast of whatever it is that you were originally sharing and you might be adding new things, then I want to make a shortcut. And I can do that by right-clicking or under organize. There's a place where you can make shortcuts and you can say to Google where you want that shortcut to go. So you can organize your shortcuts. Yay, so let's see, I'm looking through here. So teachers will need to ask students to make a copy if they need to enter answers in the doc. Exactly, Wei Huang. So if you want them to go in, if you're using Google Classroom, I think Google Classroom kind of does this anyway. But yeah, you don't have to do the work. You create the one document, you share that link with everybody, and you either show them how to make the copy from under file, or you force them to make a copy by changing the link before you give it to them. But either way, the work is for them to do. And each of them is just doing their work once versus you doing it for all your students. So it's still not that labor intensive, but yes, for them to be able to respond. Now you could have a separate document outside of your docs, or just tell them to go to their own doc and write the answers and then give you the link. But that's, so there are a couple of different ways to do it. Either way, if they make a copy, you also won't be able to see that copy. So if you need to see the answers, you're going to have to show them how to send you a link to theirs so you can see it. And actually, that's a great, if you're looking at the tasks that go along with our badges, we ask you to share a link to your project, and we ask you to share it using the commenter level access. That's a very good thing to work on with your learners, right? That they're very clear in what level access they're giving, how to do it. I still think this is one of the things that most people are the most nervous about, that they're not 100% sure what level access they've given people, how to change that, how to do any of that. So getting really clear on that, and it makes people nervous to use it, right? I have colleagues who will use Google, but when it comes to something serious where they're worried about it, they just won't use it. And it's like, okay, I mean, that's a choice, but it's not, I mean, I'm not putting my social security card number out there like that, but I'm not, it's not, yeah, it's something you can control, but you have to be really clear on what the things are. So that question I had earlier about those different, the link looking different, I had that idea that the link changed to look at when I changed the level of access. And it took me a long time to realize that that's not what happened. What about the Google Club document? Do you have the link in the slides? Mary, can you say more about that? Which Google Club document? And Joan, I see you're asking a question about the commenter level. So commenting, right, if I have comment level access, it just means I can come in and I can put in comments. So I can highlight something in the text and I can write beside it and I can say, oh, I never knew that's what this meant, or look up that word because I'm not sure that it's quite right. But I'm not going in and changing their stuff. So your stuff stays yours, but you're able to have communication along with it. And usually it's in the right column outside the document, and you'll have that exchange there. You can also, I'll do this one last thing, in Docs, I actually hate track changes. I don't know how many of you deal with track changes in Microsoft. I have some colleagues who love track changes because it makes them feel very safe, and I'm just like, it's chaos and I can't understand what's going on. But if you are someone who wants, it's not terrible, right? But so when I'm looking at this document right now, I can insert a comment anyway, right? If you have edit access, you can put comments in anyway. But over here we have the word editing, and if I change that to suggesting, that acts a bit like track changes. So if I come in here and I say, oh, get rid of that word topic and write in subject, right, you're going to see that it comes up here as a comment. And if I want to accept that, I can accept it. So if you're working with someone else and you don't want to just make the decisions willy-nilly, you just go up to this area and change the level, the kind of work you're doing. right? Editing, suggesting, and viewing. All right. Any other questions? We have a few more minutes. I'm leaving you extra time because I really want you to do that evaluation. I also want you to sign in, and I also want you to do that post test. So there's a lot of stuff you're all doing at the same time. You don't have to do it right now, but I know it's hard. Like after we get off this, it's like, late. You want to go have your life. So Joe says, yeah, suggestion mode is great for reading and correcting student work. Exactly. And collegial work too, right? Where you're not like, I'm not just saying this paragraph's baloney, but I would do it a different order, but I'm leaving it up to my colleague to agree with me or to come back with some other comment. And Mary, maybe you've gone already. So I'm not sure if you're talking about the Google Club document. So if you go to our slides on the early on, there's a slide that has a link out to our folder for today. That has everything in it. So that has the individual tasks if you're interested in doing the badge.
Yes, so that's what I was talking about, I think.
Gotcha.
So it's in the slides at the very beginning.
Yes,
Is that
and
what you said?
let's go to there. If I'm in my slides, not those slides. Let's go to these slides. Okay, so in the slides, all the way back here, slide number 3. This folder.
Okay, yes.
All of this
Yes,
stuff.
that's the one I was looking for. That's what I was looking for.
I'll share it in the chat again, just so you have it directly. But and if someone shared this whole folder with me, I would come up here. It probably says shared with me, and then this is the folder. I would right click on there, and I would go to organize, and I would say add shortcut, and then I would tell it where I want the shortcut to go. So I might say.
Okay, so you just taught me something new because I was looking for the little folder up at the top.
Which is there sometimes and isn't there sometimes. So
yeah, that's what I noticed a while ago. I don't know what I was trying to say, but I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's not a folder. How am I gonna save it?
I know it. And even that little symbol, sometimes you'll see the symbol that looks like the shortcut.
Yeah, it says save to show. Yeah, shortcut.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just right click and then you can do that.
So you right click on, so we call this a breadcrumb trail. You can do it from up here, right, and organize. You could come over to here and right click and organize. They also smushed everything under these different headers. So this drop down used to be really long, and now it's kind of accordioned. So under share, we have these 2 shares. Under organize, we have move, add shortcut, add to start, and where I can change the colors.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you. Because I try to keep my stuff organized. I save everything. And
that's fantastic. And that's the key.
That's awesome.
Because otherwise it does end up in shared with me, but this shared with me just keeps getting, stuff keeps just being.
Yes.
So that's not the final place you want it to go. From here, you could right click and again, make a shortcut. So you'll be able to get back to this work, but do it soon. And then you want to put it somewhere. And my trick with my drive is I have a lot of files that I use a lot that I've just put the number 1 in front of. So even though they're alphabetically would be much lower down, they sit at the top. And then it's very easy for me to get there.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yes, because I save files for our program and I do it by the year, but they don't, I have to look for fiscal year 23, 24 because it's all alphabetized, right? Oh my God, thank you.
Yes. So numbers will always be at the top. This kind of works because it's just this many things that I need. But if like conferences 2024, next year I'm going to take that 1 out of there, and there'll be a conferences 2025 with a 1, and then this will just it'll still be there, but it'll be alphabetically down here. So you take.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
My cheating.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. All right. 526. Any questions? Anybody thinking about doing the badges? I hope you try them out. I think you probably have all the skills already, but I think there'll be a good way for you to try things out. And then we have a third, so we have the badges. Each of these sessions will have specific badges associated with them. If you can't get work done between this session and the Monday before our next session, you have the opportunity by the end of the whole thing, at the end of June, to create a portfolio of up to 3 projects that you want to share with us that don't have to fall within those timelines. I'm someone who works to a deadline, so we wanted to give you deadlines throughout. But if this is a month where you just don't have time, you could still do this work, but just share it with us at the end as part of a portfolio. So we haven't given you a lot of directions on the portfolio yet, but basically be a folder. So you could do the work, put it in a folder, and then at the end of the year, you'll give us a link to that folder, and your best work will be there. And again, for us, it's really helpful to see what you got and what you didn't get. People ask for proof of attendance. Yes, because you've signed in. I can easily give you proof of attendance. So email me directly. I'm going to put my email in the chat. It's also at the end of the slides. But if you need proof of attendance, I can certainly give you a certificate. But I only do it if you ask. So if you don't ask, I don't do it just willy-nilly. And also I said I would give you the slides link very quickly. I'm sorry, the folder link. Yes, I'll give you, so you could scan the QR code behind me to do the sign in, but I'll also put that link in the chat. 1 second. Okay, sign in. All right, sign in is there too. So thank you, everybody. 529. Yes, have an amazing month. If you decide you check out the badge stuff now, so you know like how you'll fit it in between now and the end, but then you have time to do it towards the end. Feel free to reach out if you have questions about anything related, and also anything googly, because we're always happy to talk more about googly stuff. And oh, that was the last thing I was going to do, is give you the link for next time. So next session is going to be on Google Sites and YouTube, with the idea of using them as ways to share content that we already have. And that is the registration link, but you also have that in the slides, and you have a document in your folder that's the whole calendar for the rest of the Google Club dates. All right, well done, everybody. Look forward to seeing you in April. Take care.